In this video, I'm going to cover 5 of the, believe it or not, 15 essential elements of an effective client conversion process. So let me give you a little context as to what this is. I'm Mark Little, and I have been saying for a quarter of a century that there are 3 skills that if you are a professional retail financial advisor, that's a financial advisor that coordinates the affairs for individuals and families, that there are 3 skills you must master if you're going to be successful. The first skill is what I call client acquisition skills. That includes lead generation. Let's face it, you have to be able to fill your calendar with enough people who want to sit down with you and explore whether or not working together with you is a good idea. So I call that client acquisition skills. That's not what we're talking about today. What we're talking about today is the next skill. It's called client conversion skills. So what are we talking about with this? Well, if you are good at lead generation, then you find yourself sitting across from people quite often who want to explore doing business with you. And the client conversion skill, it means that if you find yourself sitting in front of someone who actually does meet the profile of the client that you serve best, how skilled are you at being able to convert that individual from a non-paying client a non-client into an actual paying client? It's a skill to be able to make the case that your skills and your service model is precisely what they're looking for. That's what I'm calling client conversion skills. Now, what does it amount to? It is the initial client interview, mostly. Now, some of you may have a multi-meeting client conversion process. That's fine. What I'm going to cover today is the initial client interview as a part of your client conversion process. And what's the third skill? Just to complete the set, client service. You have to be skilled at being able to consistently exceed your client's expectations over time, over many, many years. And so those are the 3 skills. Let's talk about the 5 of the 15 essential elements of an effective client conversion process. And we're going to talk about the initial client interview. So the first essential element is that you need to get straight to business in less than a minute. So you start the initial client interview. The question is, do you do a little rapport building first? Do you talk about sports? Do you talk about weather? Do you try to find some common ground with this individual or this couple on a personal level and yuck it up about that for a minute in an attempt to become friends first? Or do you get straight to business? You immediately state the purpose of the meeting and get right to it. Well, the data shows that clients prefer that you get straight to business. So we tested this many years ago. I would initiate an initial client interview with both ways. I would do a dozen where I opened doing rapport building, talking about sports and weather and things we have in common first for about a minute or two. And then I did another dozen meetings or so where I got straight to business. And what we discovered was, depends on the potential client primarily, but I will say this. What we learned was the more affluent the potential client and the more successful the affluent client, the more they appreciated getting straight to business, just stating the purpose of the meeting immediately, getting right into it. They truly appreciated that. So I'll say it this way. The more an individual fits your ideal client profile, the more they appreciate getting straight to business and really don't enjoy the rapport building at the beginning of the meeting. Okay. Number 2, is your initial client interview a compelling experience for them? Let me explain. When you sit down for the very first time with a potential client to explore whether or not you're going to do business together, is it a positive, emotionally charged meeting? Have you designed the meeting so that when they walk out the door at the end of the meeting, they have more than just an intellectual appreciation for all that got accomplished in that first meeting, but it's emotional as well. They feel like they've really been elevated and that the meeting was so valuable that they would tell other people about it. So if not, then you need to explore that. When we implemented that single essential element 24 years ago into our methodology, that changed everything. So it takes some thought. There are systems around. If you're curious of the system I used for that, I'd be happy to share it with you. Just contact us and I'm happy to explain what we ended up doing to create an emotionally charged experience for the client. But I didn't invent it. It was created by a skilled trainer in our financial services industry, a guy named Bill Backrack. So it doesn't have to be something you design. It can already exist. But the point is, you will have a more effective initial client interview, and you will have a much more successful experience making the case to people that actually do fit your profile if you can create an emotionally as well as an intellectually charged meeting agenda. Okay, that's number two. Number three, the number three essential element is that the people attending your meeting walk out the door feeling it was valuable. So we've talked about getting down to business right away, creating an agenda that is emotionally as well as intellectually charging. Now we're talking about value. The third essential element is, if let's say somebody does not meet the profile of the client that you serve best. So you find yourself in the middle of an initial client interview with somebody who does not fit your client profile. So therefore, in your head, you're thinking, well, we're not going to do business together. The question is, even if you're not going to do business together, do they walk out of this meeting with some work product where they think, wow, this meeting was valuable? You know, I am so glad I attended this meeting because it created some work product that I can use even if I don't work with this financial advisor. Okay. So is your meeting content valuable? Here's the litmus test for value. Can you charge for that meeting? Now that's what I do. And I started doing that a quarter of a century ago. I charged $500 for that initial client interview. So just think about that for a minute. If you charged, and I'm not saying charge $500 necessarily, that's just what I charge. But even if you charged any amount, like $250 or $100, if you charged for that initial client interview, is there enough meat and intellectual value in that meeting? And do you create something that when they walk out the door, they go, wow, this was worth whatever you're charging for the meeting? So stop to consider, if you're not charging, is it because the meeting itself is not valuable enough? And so I think that number three, you know, are the potential clients leaving your meeting with something truly of value is a critical component here. And the final essential element number five is, yes, you need to have some ground rules around the initial client interview that involve both spouses. So in the case where you're dealing with a couple rather than an individual, and I'm talking about even if you're dealing with an individual that you come to find out they're married and therefore they're a couple, make the ground rule that both spouses must be present. And if you don't, it won't be an effective process because, and if you've tried it, you know exactly what I mean. If you have a meeting, an initial client interview with one but not both of the spouses, and you get straight to business, it's an emotionally charged, positively emotionally charged meeting that is valuable, that the work product created is of extraordinary value, and they bring it home to their spouse, but the other spouse wasn't present, I'm saying that you have a less good chance of persuading both spouses that this is the best for them than if you just require both spouses be present, which means you may have some percentage of people that just say, yeah, well, if both of us have to be there, then, I guess we're just going to have to count us out. Well, that's fine because your chances weren't high to begin with. And the way I deal with this is I ask them, because they'll use all these excuses. They'll say, oh, I handle all the money, or my spouse hates all this money stuff. Or they might say, oh, this is a second marriage. We both have adult children, and my spouse has their assets and I have my assets. They'll come up with all kinds of seemingly legitimate reasons to meet with you one-on-one, to which I always just say, well, let me ask you this. You're married, right? Yes, we are. Do you consider marriage to be a team effort? Now, 99% will say yes. Marriage is a team effort. If they say no, and it's a very small percentage, I think I've only encountered this maybe 3 times in 40 years. If they say no, it's not, well, then you have a dysfunctional situation. And I do ask, are you talking about divorce? And if they're talking about divorce, then of course, obviously, I will meet with them one-on-one. They are trying to plan out the separation from a marriage. And of course, I would sit down in that case. But if they are married and not planning to divorce, and they claim that marriage is not a team effort, you can, believe me or not, just take it as a dysfunctional situation that is unlikely to become a good client for you. So just give it up, make it a rule. Both spouses must be present. The vast majority of people, and they may run an attempt on you to say, oh, I handle all the money or whatever the case. And you say, well, is marriage a team effort? And they say, yes. Say, well, I'm going to be asking questions that involve both of you. And I just don't, it wouldn't be right for you to answer on your spouse's behalf, right? And when your spouse finds out that you were in a meeting, like kind of speaking on their behalf, most people would rather speak for themselves. And especially when it comes to envisioning your ideal future, both spouses have a stake in that. And, it's just the way we do things here. Both spouses must be present or it's just not worth the effort. So that's how you handle that. And so if you'll do these 5 things and you'll redesign your initial client interview around this, you will have great success at, once you've mastered client acquisition, which is lead generation, and now your calendar is filled with lots of people who want to sit down with you to explore whether or not they want to do business with you or not. And now you have 5 of these 15 essential elements for an effective client conversion process. By just ensuring those first 5 things are in place and fully functional, you will increase the likelihood that you'll acquire clients as long as they fit your client profile than anything else that you could do. We have the data on this, not to mention the fact that I experimented with this enough just to make sure that it works. So I can tell you with authority that this is the way to design your client conversion process. So until next time, I leave you with that and wish you every future success. I'm Mark Little.